First of all, I like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this important session. My name is Nils Wilking. I'm Associate Professor, Medical Oncologist, affiliated to the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. I like to present some data from a recent comparative report on cancer in Europe, and this is a collaboration in between different scientists, Thomas Hofmacher, Gunnar Brodvik, Peter Lindgren from IHE, Institute of Health Economics in Sweden, Christer Swedman, who's an oncologist, and Bengt Jönsson, who's a professor emeritus from the Stockholm School of Economics. This is a report that's available on the net. It was published in early 2020, and it summarizes data up until 2018. First of all, just a few remarks on trends of incidence and mortality in Europe. You can see here in the yellow line that mortality has increased some 20% over a period of time from 1995. And we can see if we extrapolate that the increase will continue. The incidence has increased more dramatically. The incidence has increased about 50% during the time period 95 to 2018. So that is quite different from the mortality increase of 20%. And if we look, this is the overall European perspective, but if we look into some specific cancers, and this is lung cancer, and here we compare data from different time periods, 95 to 99, 2000 to 2004, and then up to 2014. And you can see that there are some bars that are hatched, indicating 5-year survival based on either regional registries or estimates by local registries that has been transformed to national data. What you can see for lung cancer is that the 5-year survival differs quite substantially. You can see that Bulgaria has about 7-8% 5-year survival, compared with about 3 times higher level in for example, Switzerland. Croatia, actually, we had a high reported survival back in 95, but now it seems that the survival is more around 10%. So Croatia is about half the 5-year survival in lung cancer compared to some of the best performing countries within Europe. Still, if we look at what has happened in mortality, and especially among the younger patients below the year 65, you can see, if you compare the blue bars and the yellow bars, that there has been quite a reduction in many countries, especially actually in countries in Central and Eastern Europe. You can see that Hungary, the blue bar, is substantially higher than the yellow bar. And you can also see in Croatia that the loss of life due to mortality among patients below the age of 64 has really decreased over time. So we're seeing some trends that reflect some kind of quite large improvement in cancer care. A lot of this, I believe, is related to a reduction in lung cancer incidence and thereby a reduction in mortality. If we turn to the cost of cancer, we compare the cost, what is spent in hospital for medication, and what we call direct costs, and this is correlated to per capita spending. And here we look at data from 2018. We look at in what's been spent in euro or comparable currency, and then we adjust it for purchasing power, which means that some of the affluent countries will have comparable data to some of the countries with lower economic standard. Here you can see there is quite a dramatic difference with, let's say, Romania spending just over around 60 euros per capita, while, for example, in Switzerland, the spending is 5 to 6 times higher. Croatia is spending around 100, so Croatia is about a third of the top spending. That's about a third of the money in relation to spending on cancer per capita. So there are great differences in the money available for cancer care in different countries. Still, if we look on the total European picture, we can compare the direct cost in blue bars from 95 up until 2018, and you see that the direct cost for hospital, drugs, staffing, they have doubled. But in the yellow and the hatched yellow bar, we can see that the indirect costs have actually decreased. Not that very much, but around 15%. That is due to lower mortality rate, especially among patients below the age of 65. So we've seen an increase, doubling of direct costs, but a decrease of almost 20% in indirect costs. If we then look at cancer medicines, we can see that the spending over a 10-year period from 2008 to 2018, that has changed with a factor of about 2.5. So the spending 2018 is about 32 billion euros, and that's substantially higher than it was 10 years before. But still, if we look and compare different countries, you can see that the spending differs extremely. There are extreme variations in the spending in different countries, with some of the Eastern Central European countries having, less than 20 euros available for spending on cancer medicines per capita. Croatia is sort of a little bit in between with almost 40 euros per capita. But you can see, let's say, Austria, Switzerland, they are spending around 100 or even more than 100 euros per capita on cancer drugs. On the other hand, if we look at cancer medicines, they account a growing share of direct cost, which means that the share of direct cost for healthcare that goes to cancer drugs, that is very high in some countries, especially then in Central Eastern European countries. I told you there is not that much money available for cancer care, and the spending on cancer drugs have increased quite a lot. So in Bulgaria, in Hungary, and actually in Croatia, about 60% of all the budget for cancer care goes to cancer drugs, while the average in Europe is around 30%, and many of the affluent countries spend around 20% of the direct cost on cancer drugs. And we've compared some of the different kind of drugs that are being used in the field of cancer, and we can see then that if we divide Europe into three different tiers, where we have a per capita income, the lower tier represents mainly countries in Central Western Europe. The mid-tier is more affluent, big countries like France, Germany, Italy, Spain, UK. And the upper tier is northern Western European countries, including Sweden, for example. And here we compare spending on immuno-oncology drugs. There are PD-1, PD-L1, and CTLA-4 drugs. And you can see that the spending overall is much higher in the more affluent upper tier countries compared to the lower tier countries. There are some outliers. You can see here with Slovenia as being quite a large spender, spending more than Spain and UK. And you can also see that Finland is also an extreme outlier in the upper tier. But on the average, there is very low uptake in almost all poorer countries. So if we look at this and try to conclude what we found in this report is, if we translate research into value for patient, there needs to be incentive for valuable medicines, but that needs to be linked to better outcome-based payment models. And we should encourage payers to implement innovative and timely pricing and reimbursement approaches. We need to have new approaches to pricing, valuation, and payments. And we think, my final slide here, that there is definitely a need for national cancer control programs, for national cancer plans, and I would also emphasize the need for a pan-European cancer plan. It needs to be comprehensive, from prevention to palliative care. It needs to be evidence-based, and there needs to be a financing plan linked to it. We also need to have national-wide population-based cancer registries with detailed information on diagnosis, but also detailed information on treatment given. That's the only way we can get forward in solving the dilemma with increasing money needed for cancer care and with limited budget. Thank you.